The sun hadn't even thought about rising when Maria's alarm buzzed at 3:15 a.m. She rubbed her tired eyes and quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her teenage daughter, who was sleeping in the next room. This had been her routine for the past 15 years, waking up when most people were deep in their dreams, getting ready in the dim light of her small bathroom, and heading to clean the offices at Dawn Technologies. Every morning, she would catch the first bus of the day, sitting alone with her thermos of coffee, watching the empty streets roll by. The bus driver, Mr. Lee, would always greet her with a warm smile. One of the few people who actually saw her as a person, not just a cleaning lady. At exactly 4 a.m., Maria would push her cleaning cart through the silent hallways of Dawn Technologies. The wheels made that familiar squeaking sound, squeak, 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 echoing through the empty corridors. She had asked for W40 to fix it months ago, but the facility manager just shrugged it off. "It's just a cleaning cart," he had said, not even bothering to look up from his phone. The office building was beautiful, with its gleaming glass windows and modern furniture. But in the early morning hours, it felt different. It was her time, her space. She would start from the top floor, working her way down methodically. While dusting the expensive desks and wiping down computer screens, she would take online business classes through her earbuds. The professors' voices taught her about profit margins and market strategies while she scrubbed coffee stains from break room counters. The real challenge began around 8 a.m. when the executives started arriving. They walked past her as if she was invisible, their designer shoes clicking on the floors she had just polished. Some would deliberately drop candy wrappers next to the trash bin, watching from the corner of their eyes to see her pick them up. Others would talk about her in loud whispers while she cleaned their offices, making comments about her kind and how they should outsource the cleaning staff to cut costs. But what these executives didn't know was that while Maria cleaned their offices, she was also learning. She noticed things. Like how the marketing team's whiteboard showed declining sales numbers that they tried to hide with creative accounting. Or how the HR department's filing cabinet was filled with unaddressed employee complaints. She saw the tired looks on young employees' faces when they worked late, heard their whispered conversations about toxic leadership. During one particular morning, while she was emptying the trash in the main conference room, she overheard a heated discussion of the company's problems. The CEO was angry, pounding his fist on the table, blaming everyone but himself for the company's issues. "I don't care about employee satisfaction surveys," he had shouted. "They're lucky to have jobs." Maria kept cleaning, kept listening, kept learning. Each disrespectful comment, each ignored greeting, each condescending smile only fueled her determination. At night, after finishing her shift and attending her online classes, she would sit at her small kitchen table, surrounded by business textbooks borrowed from the library. Her daughter would often find her there, fallen asleep on her notes, still wearing her cleaning uniform. Little did anyone at Dawn Technologies suspect that the woman they mocked, the one they thought was just there to clean up their messes, was slowly but surely putting together the pieces of a plan that would change everything. A plan that would not only transform the company, but would shake the very foundation of their assumptions about power, respect, and human dignity. Maria wasn't just cleaning their offices. She was preparing to clean house in a way none of them could imagine. Between cleaning shifts at Dawn Technologies, Maria would rush to her night classes at the local community college. Her worn-out uniform was still in her bag as she sat in the back of the classroom, but her mind was sharp and focused. While other students yawned through their business strategy lessons, her hand was always the first to rise, offering insights that made even her professors pause and think. Your analysis of the case study was remarkable, her business management professor told her one evening after class. The way you identified operational inefficiencies and suggested solutions, it's exactly what top consultants look for. Maria smiled, thinking about how she'd learned more from watching Dawn Technologies' mistakes than from any textbook. At work, she kept her eyes open and her mouth shut. During lunch breaks, While eating her homemade sandwich in the building's back stairwell, she would type notes on her old smartphone. She documented everything: the high turnover rate in the IT department, the way the company wasted money on flashy office furniture while cutting employee benefits, the whispered conversations about mismanaged projects. Her daughter often asked why she put herself through this, working at dawn, studying at night, barely sleeping. "Mommy, you're so smart. You could work somewhere else, somewhere they respect you," she'd say. Maria would just smile and kiss her daughter's forehead. Sometimes, mon amour, you have to be patient and learn the game before you can change the rules. The breakthrough came during one of her finance classes. They were studying how company shares worked, how ordinary people could become part owners of big corporations. Maria's eyes lit up when she learned that Dawn Technologies was a publicly traded company. That evening, she stayed up late, researching stock prices and shareholder rights. She discovered that the company's stock had been dropping steadily. Talented employees were leaving in droves, taking their skills and knowledge to competitors. The cleaning staff weren't the only ones being mistreated. Young professionals were burning out, middle managers were frustrated, and innovation was stalling. The company's toxic culture was finally affecting its bottom line. Maria started small, investing her carefully saved money in company shares when prices dipped low. She read every financial report, every news article, every public filing. During her early morning cleaning rounds, she began paying special attention to interdepartmental memos left on desks and meeting notes scribbled on whiteboards. She wasn't just cleaning anymore. She was gathering intelligence. Other employees began to notice her. Not the executives, of course. They were too busy with their power plays and politics. But the security guard who let her in each morning started sharing his observations about who came and went at odd hours. The IT intern would chat with her while she cleaned his area, letting slip details about the company's outdated systems. The receptionist, tired of being treated like furniture by management, began keeping Maria informed about office politics. In her business law class, Maria learned about proxy voting and shareholder rights. She started attending night seminars about corporate governance, taking detailed notes while still in her cleaning uniform. Her fellow students never knew she was gathering more than just theoretical knowledge. She was building an arsenal of business acumen that would soon shock everyone at Dawn Technologies. One morning, as she polished the boardroom table where executives would later sit and make their grand plans, Maria smiled at her reflection in the gleaming wood. She had spent years being invisible to these people, but she had turned that invisibility into her greatest strength. She knew their secrets, their weaknesses, their blind spots. And soon, very soon, they would realize that the woman they had underestimated had learned to play their game better than they ever could. The next phase of her plan was about to begin, and not a single person in that building saw it coming. The morning everything started to change began like any other. Maria was cleaning the executive floor when she overheard the CEO's angry voice through the partially open conference room door. He was berating the HR director about employee complaints, his words sharp and dismissive. "I don't care if people are unhappy. If they don't like it, they can leave. There are plenty of others waiting to take their jobs," he barked, slamming his hand on the table. Maria's mop stopped mid-stroke as she listened. These diversity initiatives and mental health programs are just burning money. Cut them all. The HR director's voice trembled as she tried to explain the cost of constant turnover, but the CEO wouldn't hear it. Just then, one of the vice presidents noticed Maria in the hallway. He marched out, his face red with anger. "What are you doing here? Eavesdropping instead of cleaning?" He knocked over his coffee cup deliberately, watching as the hot liquid spread across the floor she had just mopped. "Clean it out," he sneered. "That's all you're good for anyway." The other executives snickered, returning to their meeting without a second glance. Maria quietly got her cleaning supplies, her hands steady despite her racing heart. As she wiped up the coffee, she could feel the sympathetic glance of the HR director, who looked like she wanted to help but remained silent. That evening, Instead of going straight home, Maria went to meet someone who would become a crucial ally. In a small coffee shop across town, she sat down with a former Dawn Technologies employee who had quit 6 months ago. He had been a senior manager, respected and well-liked, until he couldn't stomach the toxic environment anymore. "The company's falling apart," he told her, stirring his coffee. "Good people are leaving every week. Nobody trusts the leadership anymore." Maria nodded, then slowly pulled out her phone. She showed him her detailed notes, her analysis of the company's problems, and her growing collection of stock certificates. His eyes widened as she explained her plan. "You've been watching everything, haven't you? Well, they thought you were just cleaning." He leaned forward, intrigued. "And you're telling me you've been buying shares all this time?" Maria smiled. "Not just buying. I've been talking to other shareholders too. Small investors, former employees, even some current staff who've invested their retirement funds in company stock. They're all worried about where things are heading." She told him about her business degree, about the late nights studying corporate law, about the network she'd built among other dissatisfied shareholders. His professional experience combined with her inside knowledge could be powerful. By the end of their meeting, they had sketched out the next steps of her plan on a coffee shop napkin. Over the next few weeks, Maria began meeting more people. A group of minority shareholders who were concerned about the company's declining value. Former employees who still held stock from their time at Dawn Technologies. Even some current employees who had watched their stock options lose value under the current leadership. During the day, she continued her cleaning routine, becoming even more invisible to the executives who saw her as nothing more than part of the furniture. But now, every snide remark, every dismissive gesture, every spilled coffee cup only confirmed what her allies already knew. The company needed change, and they were ready to help make it happen. One morning, as she cleaned the CEO's office before dawn, she noticed a memo about the upcoming shareholder meeting. The executives were worried about declining profits, but were planning to blame external factors. Maria took a photo of the memo with her phone, adding it to her growing collection of evidence about mismanagement. She looked out the office window at the city lights still twinkling in the dark. Soon, very soon, these offices would feel very different. The executives who looked down on her had no idea that their power was already slipping away, right under their expensive shoes. The breaking point was coming, and Maria was ready. Maria's plan was moving faster than she expected. Word had spread quietly among the shareholders, like a whisper growing into a conversation. Her small coffee shop meetings had turned into serious discussions in law offices and conference rooms. The same business suit she'd once cleaned cookie crumbs from now hung in her closet, ready for her own meetings. Every evening, after her cleaning shift, she would change out of her uniform and transform into someone the executives would never recognize. Her daughter helped her practice her presentations, beaming with pride as her mother confidently explained complex business strategies. "You look like a CEO, Mommy," she'd say, straightening Maria's collar. The turning point came during a particularly rough week at Dawn Technologies. 3 more talented employees had quit, including a brilliant young programmer who'd created some of the company's best products. Maria was emptying his trash bin as he packed his desk into a cardboard box. "You know what's funny?" he said, looking at her for the first time in 2 years. "You're probably the only person here who actually sees everything. You've watched this place fall apart, haven't you?" He handed her a business card. "If you ever need anything, well, let's just say I'd love to see these guys get what's coming to them." That card joined Maria's growing network of allies. Former employees, current shareholders, industry experts, all of them had pieces of the puzzle she was putting together. Her night school professors had introduced her to investment bankers who were intrigued by her detailed analysis of the company's problems and her solutions. During her cleaning rounds, Maria started noticing little signs that her plan was working. The executives looked worried, huddling in corners, whispering about declining stock prices and unhappy shareholders. They still ignored her, which made it easy to overhear their conversations about emergency board meetings and potential crisis management. One morning, she was cleaning the CFO's office when she overheard him on the phone, his voice tense. "We can't explain the stock movement," he was saying. "Someone's buying up shares, but we can't figure out who. And the smaller shareholders are getting restless. They're not happy with our explanations anymore." Maria smiled as she dusted his desk, invisible as always. The CFO had no idea that the very person he was worried about was standing right there, wearing a cleaning uniform and holding a feather duster. The shares she'd bought when the price was low were now worth far more, and other shareholders were rallying behind her vision for the company. Her daughter found her that evening at their kitchen table, surrounded by papers and her laptop. "How much longer, Mammy?" she asked, bringing her mother a cup of tea. Maria looked up from the shareholder documents she was reviewing. "Soon, mi amor." "Very soon. The annual shareholder meeting is next month, and we're almost ready." The next morning, as Maria pushed her cleaning cart through the hallways, she noticed more worried faces among the executives. They rushed between meetings, barely noticing as she picked up their scattered papers and coffee cups. But now, instead of feeling invisible, she felt powerful. Every dismissive glance, every ignored greeting was just another reminder of why things needed to change. She had transformed their biggest mistake, underestimating her, into her greatest advantage. While they had been busy looking down on her, she had been looking up, learning their weaknesses, understanding their mistakes, and building a coalition that would soon shock them all. That afternoon, she received the final confirmation she needed. Her lawyer called to tell her they had secured enough proxy votes. Together with her own shares and those of her allies, they now controlled a majority of the company's stock. Maria looked at her reflection in the window she was cleaning, seeing not a cleaning lady, but the future of Dawn Technologies. The executives still didn't know what was coming, but in just a few weeks, their world would turn upside down. And Maria would be ready, armed with years of observation, a solid education, and a plan to transform the company they had taken for granted. The day before the shareholder meeting, Maria cleaned the executive offices one last time. Her familiar cleaning cart squeaked through the hallways as always, but something felt different. The air was thick with tension. Through the glass walls, she could see worried faces in every office, executives huddled over their phones and laptops. The CEO stormed past her, not even noticing when he knocked over her bucket of cleaning supplies. She heard him shouting into his phone, "I don't care what it takes. Find out who's buying up all these shares, and get those proxy votes back under control." His face was red with anger and fear, the same face that had dismissed her countless times over the years. In the break room, young employees whispered about rumors of a hostile takeover. Maria kept quiet as she wiped down the counters, listening to their hopes that maybe things would finally change. "I heard someone's trying to replace the whole board," one of them said. "Whoever it is, they must really know what's wrong with this place." During her lunch break, Maria sat in her usual spot in the back stairwell. But instead of eating, she was on the phone with her lawyer, confirming the final details. "Everything's ready for tomorrow," he assured her. "The shareholders are behind you. The presentation is perfect. All those years of watching and learning are about to pay off." That evening, she stood in front of her bedroom mirror, trying on her new business suit one last time. Her daughter helped her practice her speech, just like they'd done so many times before. But this time was different. This was really happening. "You're not nervous, Mammy?" her daughter asked, adjusting her mother's collar. Maria smiled, thinking about all the mornings she'd spent cleaning the very boardroom where she would soon stand. "A little," she admitted, "but mostly I feel ready. I've been preparing for this moment for 15 years, even if I didn't always know it." She thought about the security guard, who would be surprised to see her walk in tomorrow morning through the front door instead of the service entrance. About the receptionist who would finally see her dressed in something other than a cleaning uniform. About the ed intern who had always treated her with kindness, not knowing she would soon be running the company. That night, she could barely sleep. She kept thinking about all the little moments that had led to this day, the countless times she'd been ignored or dismissed, the coffee spills she cleaned up while listening to crucial business discussions, the executive meetings she'd observed while emptying trash bins. Every slight, every insult, every dismissive gesture had taught her exactly what needed to change. Early the next morning, instead of putting on her cleaning uniform, Maria dressed in her new suit. Her hands trembled slightly as she put on the pearl necklace her daughter had helped her choose. "For good luck," her daughter said, hugging her tight. "Show them who you really are, Mommy." As she drove to the office instead of taking her usual bus, Maria thought about how this was the last morning she would be invisible. By the end of the day, everyone would know her name. They would know that the woman they had looked through for 15 years had been watching, learning, and planning all along. She parked in the visitor's lot and walked toward the front entrance, her heels clicking on the pavement. Through the glass doors, she could see the executives arriving, looking tense and distracted. None of them recognized her as she walked past, her briefcase holding the documents that would change everything. The security guard did a double take as she showed him her shareholder badge instead of her cleaning staff ID. She smiled at him warmly. He had always been kind to her. "Things are about to change around here," she said softly, walking toward the boardroom where the shareholder meeting would begin in just 1 hour. Her heart was racing, but her steps were steady. She had earned this moment, one early morning at a time, one clean office at a time, one business class at a time. The woman they had underestimated was about to become their boss, and Dawn Technologies would never be the same. The boardroom slowly filled with shareholders and executives. Maria sat quietly in the back, watching as the CEO and board members took their places at the front, shuffling papers nervously. Nobody gave her a second glance. Even in her business suit, they didn't recognize the woman who had cleaned their offices just yesterday. The meeting began with the usual formalities. The CEO tried to sound confident as he explained away the company's problems, blaming market conditions and external factors for their declining performance. Despite some temporary setbacks, he announced, "We remain strong and focused on growth." Maria could see the skepticism on shareholders' faces. They'd heard these empty promises before. She noticed the young programmer who had quit last month sitting a few rows ahead, along with other former employees who had kept their shares. They were all waiting for the right moment. When the chairman asked for questions from shareholders, Maria stood up. The microphone felt cool in her hand as she began to speak. "I have some concerns about the company's direction," she said clearly. The CEO squinted at her, trying to place her face. "The current leadership has created a toxic culture," she continued. "They've driven away talented employees, ignored innovative ideas, and wasted resources on vanity projects while cutting essential programs." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "And I can prove it." The CEO's face reddened. "And who exactly are you?" he demanded, interrupting her. Maria smiled. The moment she had waited years for had finally arrived. "I'm Maria Ramirez," she said, her voice steady. "For 15 years, I've cleaned your offices every morning. I've watched as you ignored employee concerns, dismissed diversity initiatives, and ran this company into the ground. But I'm also a business graduate, a shareholder, and as of this morning, the leader of a coalition controlling 51% of this company's stock." The room erupted in murmurs. The executives' faces showed a mix of shock, disbelief, and dawning horror as they finally recognized her. The same woman they had walked past every day, whose humanity they had ignored, was now their biggest shareholder. "This is ridiculous," the CEO sputtered, but Maria was already walking to the front of the room. Her lawyer stood up, confirming the legal documents. One by one, her allies in the room began to speak up, backing her vision for the company's future. "While you were busy looking down on me," Maria continued, "I was watching everything. I saw how you treated people, how you wasted resources, how you ignored problems until they became crises. But I also saw the potential in our talented employees, the opportunities you missed, the changes needed to make this company truly great. She opened her presentation showing detailed plans for restructuring the company. Her analysis was thorough, backed by years of observation and her business education. The shareholders listened intently as she outlined her vision for a more inclusive, innovative, and profitable future. Today, we vote for change, she declared. It's time for leadership that values every employee, from the cleaning staff to the executives. Leadership that understands that true success comes from respecting and empowering people, not dismissing them. The vote that followed wasn't even close. The shareholders had seen enough of the old way of doing things. One by one, they raised their hands in support of Maria's proposals. The CEO and board members sat in stunned silence as their power slipped away. As the meeting concluded, people crowded around Maria, congratulating her. The security guard gave her a thumbs up from the door. The receptionist was crying happy tears. Young employees were already coming up to her with ideas they'd been afraid to share before. Looking at the executives' shocked faces, Maria felt no triumph or revenge, only determination to create the kind of company she had always known was possible. A company where no one would feel invisible or unworthy, where good ideas could come from anywhere, and where respect was a fundamental value, not an optional courtesy. The cleaning lady they had mocked was now their CEO, and Dawn Technologies would never be the same. Maria's first day as CEO started early, not at 4 a.m. like before, but early enough to greet the cleaning staff as they arrived. She walked through the familiar hallways, this time in a business suit instead of a cleaning uniform, stopping to learn each cleaner's name. Their surprised smiles reminded her of where she'd started. "The break room coffee machine is broken again," one of the cleaners mentioned hesitantly, not sure if the new CEO would care about such a small detail. Maria made a note on her phone. "We'll have a new one installed today," she promised. "And why don't we set up a proper break room for the cleaning staff? You deserve a comfortable place to rest." By 9 a.m., the office was buzzing with energy. Employees who had never dared to speak up before were stopping by her office, the same office she used to clean, with ideas and suggestions. A young intern trembled as she shared her thoughts about improving the company's outdated software. Instead of dismissing her, Maria invited her to lead a task force on technological innovation. The old executive team was asked to reapply for their positions, this time with a new set of criteria focusing on leadership skills and employee development, not just profit margins. Some left immediately, unable to accept the change in power. Others, surprisingly, asked for a chance to prove they could adapt to the new culture. During her first company-wide meeting, Maria stood at the front of the packed conference room. "I've seen this company from every angle," she began. "From cleaning these floors at dawn to sitting in night classes learning business strategy. And now, as your CEO, I can tell you what makes a company truly successful. It's not fancy offices or aggressive management. It's treating every single person with respect and giving them the chance to contribute their best." She announced immediate changes: a raise for the maintenance and cleaning staff, extended healthcare benefits for all employees, and a new mentorship program. But the biggest change was in how decisions would be made. "No more closed doors," she declared. "Good ideas can come from anywhere. Every voice matters here now." In the weeks that followed, the office transformed. The old executive dining room became a community space where employees from all levels could eat together. The toxic managers who couldn't adapt were replaced by people who shared Maria's vision of inclusive leadership. The break room's fancy coffee machine was matched by equally good ones in the maintenance staff areas. One morning, she arrived to find the young programmer who had quit now back at his desk, along with several other talented employees who had left under the old leadership. "The word is spreading," he told her. "People say this is becoming the kind of place where they actually want to work." Maria's daughter visited the office one afternoon, her eyes wide as she saw her mother in her new role. "Remember when you used to help me practice my business presentations?" Maria asked, hugging her. "Now you'll help me practice my speeches for the whole company." The changes weren't just about making people feel good. They made business sense too. Employees started sharing innovative ideas they'd been afraid to mention before. The toxic turnover rate dropped dramatically. Team projects that had been stalled for months suddenly started moving forward as people felt empowered to take initiative. Not everything was easy. Some old guard executives tried to undermine her, spreading rumors and doubting her abilities. But Maria had spent 15 years being underestimated. She knew how to handle it. She stayed focused on her vision, letting the results speak for themselves. At the end of her first month as CEO, Maria did something that surprised everyone. She spent a morning helping the cleaning staff, wearing her old uniform one last time. "Never forget where you came from," she told a young employee who asked why the CEO was cleaning windows. "And never forget that every job has dignity, every person has value, and everyone deserves respect." 6 months into Maria's leadership, Dawn Technologies had become almost unrecognizable, in the best possible way. The story of the cleaning lady who became CEO had spread far beyond the company walls, catching the attention of business magazines and news outlets. But Maria wasn't interested in fame. She was focused on proving that treating people with dignity wasn't just right, it was good business. One morning, she arrived to find a line of people outside the building. They weren't customers or investors, but job seekers. "We heard this is a place where everyone has a chance," one woman told her. "Where you're judged by your abilities and dedication, not your background." Maria smiled, remembering her own journey. The company's success was showing up in unexpected ways. Employee sick days dropped dramatically. People actually wanted to come to work. The innovative ideas that had been buried under the old leadership were flourishing. A maintenance worker's suggestion about energy efficiency had saved the company thousands in utility costs. A receptionist's idea for improving customer service had led to a major contract. During a board meeting, Maria presented the latest numbers. Profits were up 40% from the previous year. Employee turnover had dropped from 35% to just 5%. The company's stock price had doubled. "But these aren't just numbers," she explained. "They're proof that when you invest in people, they invest in the company's success." She'd kept her promise about starting at the bottom. The cleaning staff now had proper break rooms, fair wages, and most importantly, respect. Several had enrolled in night classes, just like she had. "You never know," she'd tell them with a wink. "Maybe one of you will have my job someday." The old executive offices had been converted into open workspaces where teams could collaborate. Maria's own office had glass walls and an open-door policy. "Transparency isn't just about seeing through walls," she often said. "It's about being open to new ideas, no matter where they come from." One day, a group of business students visited for a tour. They were surprised to find the CEO serving coffee during a team meeting. "Leadership isn't about sitting in a big office giving orders," she told them. "It's about serving others and creating an environment where everyone can succeed." The company's transformation hadn't gone unnoticed in the business world. Other companies started sending representatives to learn about their inclusive management style. Some scoffed at first until they saw the results. It was hard to argue with doubled profits and record-high employee satisfaction. Maria's daughter had started interning at the company during her college breaks. "You've changed so much more than just one company, Mommy," she said one evening. "You're changing how people think about leadership." Maria watched as her daughter confidently shared ideas in meetings, knowing she'd never have to feel invisible like her mother once did. The old guard who had looked down on her. Some had left, unable to adapt to a workplace where respect was non-negotiable. Others had surprisingly transformed, learning to value different perspectives. One former executive even admitted, "I was wrong." I never imagined our cleaning lady could teach us so much about running a business." During a company celebration, Maria stood back and watched as employees from all levels chatted and laughed together. The walls between departments, both literal and figurative, had come down. The nervous intern who'd once trembled while sharing ideas was now confidently leading a technology project. The security guard was taking business classes in the evening. The maintenance team was celebrated for their cost-saving innovations. The biggest mistake the old leadership made, Maria told a reporter who asked about her success, was thinking some people were too small to matter. In a truly great company, there are no small people. There are only small minds that can't see the potential in others. As she walked through the office that evening, she passed her old cleaning cart, still parked in its usual spot. She ran her hand along its handle, remembering all those early mornings. The cart's wheels still squeaked a little. She'd kept that small flaw on purpose, a reminder of where this journey had started. 1 year after Maria took over as CEO, Dawn Technologies hosted a special anniversary celebration. The company's lobby, once cold and imposing, was filled with warmth and laughter. Employees from every department mingled together, sharing stories of how things had changed. But instead of making a grand speech from a podium, Maria started the celebration by doing something unexpected. She arrived at 4 a.m., just like she used to, and helped the cleaning staff prepare the building for the day. Some of the newer employees were shocked to see their CEO mopping floors in the early morning light. "My mother always told me that success shouldn't change who you are," she explained to a surprised young intern who arrived early. "It should only change how many people you can help." She continued cleaning as she talked, showing the intern the proper way to wipe down windows, a skill she perfected over 15 years. Later that morning, Maria unveiled her newest initiative, the Dawn Foundation. This foundation will provide scholarships for maintenance staff, cleaning crews, and their children across the country, she announced. Because talent and ambition can be found everywhere, sometimes they just need a chance to grow. The foundation's first recipients were already selected, 20 cleaning staff members from various companies who wanted to pursue their education. Among them was a young woman who reminded Maria of herself 15 years ago, cleaning offices at night while dreaming of something more. During the celebration, Maria's daughter proudly showed visitors around the company. "See that cleaning cart in the lobby display case?" she'd tell them. "That's the one my mom used for 15 years. She kept it to remind everyone that no job is too small and no dream is too big." The cart had become something of a symbol. Its squeaky wheel, which had once echoed through empty hallways, now served as a reminder of how far they'd come. New employees would hear the story during orientation, about the cleaning lady who turned a toxic workplace into a model of inclusive leadership. But the real proof of change wasn't in symbols or stories. It was in the daily life of the company. The maintenance worker whose daughter was now in college thanks to the new education benefits. The former executives who had learned to value every employee's contribution. The young intern who'd become head of innovation, her ideas no longer silenced by hierarchy. "You know what's funny?" Maria said during a team meeting. "People keep asking me how I transformed this company. But the truth is, the potential was always here. It was in every person they ignored, every idea they dismissed, every worker they undervalued. All I did was create a space where that potential could flourish." The company's success had sparked a movement in the business world. Other corporations were starting to rethink their approach to leadership and workplace culture. The Dawn model, they called it, where respect wasn't just a policy, but a fundamental practice. As the celebration continued, Maria took a moment to walk through the building alone. She passed the break rooms, now equally comfortable for all employees. She saw the collaborative spaces where once there had been closed executive offices. She watched teams working together, regardless of their titles or backgrounds. Finally, she stopped at her old cleaning closet, now transformed into a small museum of the company's journey. Her first cleaning uniform was displayed alongside her business degree and CEO nameplate. Below them was a simple quote: "Every person deserves to be seen. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every job has dignity." That evening, as the celebration wound down, a young cleaning lady approached Maria with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for what you did, but for showing us what's possible." Maria hugged her, remembering her own fears and dreams from those early morning hours. "Remember," Maria told her, "success isn't about reaching the top alone. It's about reaching back and helping others climb with you. That's how real change happens. One person, one dream, one act of respect at a time." As she left the office that night, Maria looked back at the building glowing in the twilight. The company had changed, yes, but more importantly, it had helped change people's beliefs about what was possible. And that, she knew, was just the beginning.